They stole more than money. They stole the hours themselves. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I'm your host, Harrington. Tell me where you're tuning in. I value your voices. The mystery begins. You can always tell when somebody's about to ruin Wolfe's morning by how long they linger at the doorbell. The short ones are delivery boys. The long ones are doom. At 11:30 that Tuesday, the bell gave us the long kind, the kind that echoes through the hall like it's auditioning for a funeral. Fritz poked his head out of the kitchen, eyebrows raised as if to ask whether I'd misplaced the "no solicitors, no strangers, and definitely no morning visitors" sign we should have had engraved years ago. I went to the door, because that's my department, and opened it to a woman who looked like she'd already outweighted 3 secretaries and a saint. She was tall, dressed for precision, grey wool suit, gloves that hadn't bent twice, and eyes that measured rooms before stepping into them. "Mr. Nero Wolfe," she said, as if she were claiming an appointment with a monarch. "Currently vertical and unavailable," I told her. "If you're selling anything less vital than oxygen, I'd suggest the competition across the street." She didn't blink. "My name is Lydia Vance. I was told Mr. Wolfe occasionally takes private cases of a delicate nature." That was true, and I was occasionally a ballet dancer. "You were told wrong. He takes cases that offend his sense of logic or appetite. Sometimes both." "What's yours offend?" "Time," she said. That got my attention, and Wolfe's too, apparently, because his voice floated out from the office like a thundercloud rolling off a mountain. "Archie, bring her in." Lydia Vance crossed the threshold like she'd conquered it. In the office, Wolfe was behind his desk, surrounded by the smell of orchids and irritation, wearing the expression he reserves for people who interrupt digestion or reading. He didn't rise. He never does. "Madame," he said, "you've disturbed my morning. Please justify it succinctly." She glanced at the clock on the wall. "Someone has stolen my time." Archie Goodwin, first-class cynic that I am, didn't snort, barely. "Not metaphorically," she continued, "physically. A week's worth of records, appointment books, drafts, logs, gone from my office safe 2 nights ago. I run the Horologe Foundation. We sponsor timekeeping research and restoration projects. My board is threatening a scandal." "A burglary," Wolfe said flatly. "A policeman's concern." "Except," she said, "that the safe was locked from the inside, and the only person with a key was found unconscious in the hallway, with his watch stopped at precisely midnight." That earned her a fractional lift of Wolfe's brows, an event rarer than a solar eclipse over the East River. I said, "So you want us to find who took your calendars before they make off with Greenwich?" Her lips pressed thin. "I want Mr. Wolfe to find who engineered this before my board votes to suspend me Friday. They think I fabricated the theft to hide missing funds." "Ah," Wolfe murmured. "Defamation cloaked in arithmetic." She opened a leather folio and laid a check on his desk. 5 figures, crisp enough to buy him out of a dozen mornings' laziness. Wolfe didn't glance at it. "Madame, I detest urgency. Yet your case implies a mischief of precision. Someone who plays with time as a craftsman would an abacus." Intriguing. I knew then he'd take it. When something tickled both his pride and his vocabulary, resistance was futile. He leaned back. "Very well. Leave me the names of your principal associates, the layout of your premises, and the police report, if one exists. Mr. Goodwin will come to your office this afternoon. You will not, under any circumstances, speak to the press." She nodded, stood, and left the room with the poise of someone who's been trained to conceal panic. When the door shut, I said, "You don't believe in ghosts or locked safes that lock themselves. So what's the hook?" Wolfe closed his eyes. "Theft of time, Archie, is metaphorical nonsense. But the phrase suggests the thief knew she would seek intellect over investigation, which means the culprit understands me. He reached for his beer. And that, my dear Archie, is intolerable. Fritz brought coffee that could have convinced the federal government to stand down, and Wolfe waved it away like it was a census taker. He kept his eyes on the check Lydia had placed, not because of the total, but as if numerals might confess under pressure. I collected the paper she'd left, org chart, floor plan, the board list with notes in a tidy, anxious hand, and gave it a skim while he contemplated froth. "The police?" I asked. "Regrettably involved," Wolfe said. "You will not antagonize them unless compelled. That's like asking me not to antagonize gravity. Who's the key?" He pointed to the top of the sheet. "Horologe Foundation. 3 directors, 1 chair, 1 operations manager, 1 curator, 1 archivist. The man who was found unconscious and allegedly holds the only safe key is Mr. Edmund Baird, operations manager. Mr. Baird is a liability, therefore interesting. I want to see his wrists." "You develop new hobbies when I'm not looking," I said. "Bruising, Archie. If his watch was stopped at midnight, it was for someone's theatrics. I want to know whose." He buzzed Fritz and asked for the yellow pages. That meant phone calls to people who didn't deserve them. He gave me 3 numbers. "Call and request the presence of Mr. Baird and Ms. Tara Lynes. Archivist. Tell them Ms. Vance has engaged me and I wish to hear their accounts unmolested by committee. Ask that they come at 1 o'clock. If either refuses, note the tone." I made the calls. Baird answered on the second ring with a voice that was trying hard to sound administrative and not hungover. He agreed, eagerly. Tara Lynes didn't answer. Her voicemail was crisp, and I left a message with the kind of brevity that discourages creativity. "We ate lunch precisely at 1 because Fritz refuses to mistreat a cutlet for scheduling. At 1:11, the bell rang, and we got the long note again. I opened the door to 2 entries in the field guide to workplace fauna, a narrow, fox-faced man in a navy suit with a tie knotted too tight for serenity, and a woman in a charcoal dress holding a file box like a shield. The man stuck out his hand. "Edmund Baird," he said, "and this is Ms. Lynes." She thought the records might be useful. "Tara Lynes," she corrected, not offering her hand. Not shy, careful. Her eyes darted past me at the hall as if counting steps. I ushered them in. Wolfe didn't stand. He lifted a finger to indicate the red leather chairs and didn't waste a syllable on pleasantries. He let their fidgeting hit a rhythm before he spoke. "You've had an event," he said. "Tell me the facts without embroidery." Baird cleared his throat and found an innocent spot on the carpet. Miss Vance told you the essentials. Monday morning, the alarm was blinking on the archive level, suggesting a power flicker overnight. We checked the safe. I unlocked it. The primary logbooks for the quarter, appointment journal for Miss Vance, and a draft report to the board were missing. No sign of forced entry. The safe is time-locked with a manual override. Only I possessed the override key. It was in my pocket. I collapsed in the hallway and woke to Ms. Lynes and the night guard. My watch had stopped at midnight. "Your watch is mechanical?" Wolfe asked. "Of course," Baird said with the smugness of a club membership. "A restored 1935 marine chronometer converted for the wrist." "Show me your wrists." Baird blinked, but he unbuttoned his cuffs. No bruises. The skin was unmarked except for a pale half-moon impression where the watch sat. I glanced at Tara. She watched his wrists too, the way a librarian observes a whisperer making noise. "Miss Lynes," Wolfe said, "your role?" "Archivist," she said. "I manage physical records. What comes in? What gets catalogued? What goes to storage?" The logbooks were in the safe at 6 Monday evening. I logged them myself. "Keys?" Wolfe asked. "I don't have one. The safe requires Mr. Baird's override, and the time lock was set for 8 a.m. "Did you see Mr. Baird that evening?" A tiny hesitation, then he came down to check the thermostat. "It's fussy." "Is it?" Wolfe murmured. "Mr. Baird, Your watch. Do you wind it? How often? Nightly, Baird said. Part of the ritual. I like precision. Then either you forgot Sunday, which you will deny, or someone arrested your movement at midnight for symbolism, which you will also deny. There is a pattern here I find tiresome. Archie? I pulled from the folio. Ms. Vance mentioned the board thinks she siphoned funds. Is there a hole to hide? Tara's spine straightened. No. I reconcile against the bank statements. We're clean. The draft report Ms. Vance prepared included a proposal to shift grants from restorations to education initiatives. Some people weren't thrilled. Names, Wolfe said. Galen Worth, chair of the board, Baird said quickly. Old school horology collector. Likes brass and weight. Hates outreach. He believes the foundation exists to worship precision, not to teach it to children. There's also Maya Chen, the curator. She's brilliant, but she and Tara, well, there's tension. Professional, Tara said, a shade too fast. Professional, Wolfe echoed, savoring the vowel. Mr. Worth, Miss Chen, Mr. Baird, Ms. Lines, Miss Vance, 5 points on a dial. The hands moved at midnight for show. The only purpose of theater is audience. Who was the audience? Baird licked his lip. The board meets Friday. If Ms. Vance looks reckless, Mr. Worth could weigh in. Tara hugged the box tighter. You said you wanted the records unmolested. I brought the access logs for the archive level, the alarm reports, and the HVAC schedule. There was a thermostat spike at 11:58. The system calls it a reheat event. The night guard wrote it off. Wolfe's eyes half closed, his version of jazz hands. Heat expands. Expansion shifts tolerances. A safes mechanism might misbehave under amateur meddling. Mr. Baird, did you have the reheat event before the alarm flicker? Yes, according to facilities. Then whoever rehearsed your theatrics knew both time and climate, Wolfe said. That limits our scoundrels to those intimate with the building or ingenious enough to exploit its clumsiness. The bell rang again, a shorter note, which meant not doom, just trouble. I started for the hall and met a square man with a square jaw that had been cut by municipal regulations. He held up a badge that could sour milk. Goodwin, he said. Tell your boss he's poaching. Inspector, I said. You're just in time to have your day improved. He stepped into the office, took in the tableau, and scowled at Wolfe. You couldn't wait to stink up my crime scene. Wolfe didn't open his eyes. It appears, Inspector, your crime scene has come to me. Sit or stand and seethe if that aids digestion. Either way, you may listen. And like that, the brownstones sighed under the weight of outsiders. Fritz's domain was now a waiting room, my office an annex of municipal suspicion, and Wolfe's sanctuary a theater. He didn't mind. He only minds when the actors forget their lines. Kramer was not built for Wolfe's office. He filled it the way a marching band fills a library, loudly, reluctantly, and with the faint odor of paperwork. He had a hat in his hand and suspicion in his eyes, both of which he refused to put down. Wolfe didn't bother to greet him. He simply shifted a half-inch in his chair, which in Wolfe's body language translates to, "You may proceed to waste my time." Kramer grunted. This is official business, Wolfe. Miss Vance reported the theft to the precinct. You've no business meddling. Wolfe sipped his beer, eyes still half-lidded. Miss Vance sought counsel, not meddling. The police, as usual, will have the material advantage. Boots, locks, dust. I have intellect. There's room enough in the world for both, though seldom in the same room. Kramer gave me a look that suggested I'd be a happier man if I dragged my boss to a precinct and left him there. You're going to hand over every scrap of what you got. Certainly, Wolfe said, after I've made it comprehensible. I stepped in. Inspector, we're all family here. You know the drill. Wolfe will stay put. I'll snoop and you'll grumble. By Friday you'll thank him or at least swear at him in smaller words. Kramer's jaw worked. If your snooping crosses the line, Goodwin, I'll hang you with the red tape myself. Understood, I said. But if I find the thief first, I'll hang them with logic. It's cheaper. Kramer barked something halfway to a laugh, but thought better of it. He glared at Baird and Tara, who both looked like guilty schoolkids. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't touch the safe. Don't breathe on the evidence. They nodded, and after Kramer stomped out, the brownstone finally exhaled. Wolfe exhaled too, but that was just to clear the air of competence. He said, "Archie, go. Observe the scene before it is ruined by procedural diligence." "Meaning before Kramer's boys fingerprint the wallpaper," I said. "Precisely. Begin with the safe and the thermostat. Speak with Miss Chen and Mr. Worth. Return before 6. "Sure," I said. "And if anyone asks who's paying me, do I mention Miss Vance or your ego?" Wolfe closed his eyes. "You may mention neither. Ego, unlike clients, cannot bounce a check." I took that as permission and headed out. The Horologe Foundation was on Madison Avenue in a building that had seen better centuries. Inside, time ruled. Every wall bore a clock, mantel, wall, marine, and one I swear was ticking in Latin. A young receptionist looked up as I flashed my grin and credentials. "Archie Goodwin," I said, "consulting for Miss Vance. Mr. Baird said I'd drop by." She nodded toward the hall. "Third door left, the archive. Watch your step. The alarms are touchy." I watched. The archive was a long, narrow room with metal shelving, a vault at the end, and the cool hush of air conditioning that had studied at the Arctic School of Etiquette. A uniformed guard hovered near the vault, pretending he wasn't nervous. "Goodwin," I said. "Private inquiry." He shifted. "You're with the cops?" "Only when they buy lunch." "You're Wilkes, right?" "Night shift?" "Yeah. I found Baird. He was out cold." "Describe out cold." "Flat on his back, no blood, breathing fine. His watch was on the floor, ticking. When I picked it up, it stopped." I let that sink in. "You pick it up often? Watch is stopping in your hand?" He frowned. "Never. Thing's cursed, if you ask me." "Curses don't pay electric bills," I said. "Who was in the building?" "Just me. Miss Lyons left at 6. Miss Chen had come back for a folder around 9:30. She said Miss Vance called her about the draft report." That was new. I thanked him and examined the safe. No scratches, no burns, nothing. The dial was old brass, the hinges new. A plaque read, "Horologe and Son, Zurich, 1922. The thermostat nearby had a greasy fingerprint, faint but visible. A sliver of lint clung to it, grey, woolen. I pocketed it. Upstairs, I met Maya Chen. She was late 20s, sharp and built for precision, steady eyes, steady tone. She motioned me into her office. "I know why you're here," she said. "That saves us time," I said. "You came back Monday night." "Why?" "To pick up the draft. Ms. Vance wanted me to review the museum layout for the education proposal. I left at 10. Everything was normal." Normal meaning Baird, conscious and vertical. She hesitated. He was in his office. He looked tired or drunk. "Drunk?" "He drinks. Not heavily, but often." I nodded. "You and Ms. Lyons don't exactly exchange birthday cards." That got a small smile. "Tara's meticulous. I'm spontaneous. She thinks my creativity is disorder." "And Mr. Worth?" Her expression cooled. "Mr. Worth thinks everything new is disorder. He'll use this scandal to remove Lydia. He's been trying for years." I thanked her, made notes, and on the way out, I called the Foundation's main line. Miss Vance's assistant patched me through. "She's in a meeting," he said. "Tell her Goodwin found something woolly. She'll know what that means." I got back to the brownstone by 6 as ordered. Wolfe was tending to orchids, which meant he was cultivating patience with a trowel. I gave him the rundown, the lint, and the details about the thermostat spike. He listened, motionless, then said, "Grey wool. Miss Vance's suit was grey, but the woman is not foolish. Miss Lyne's wore charcoal. Miss Chen's coat, wool. Light tweed. Beige. The lint's too dark. Mr. Worth, then, old-fashioned wool lover. You'll see him tomorrow. Wear restraint. Men who treasure timepieces dislike those who move too fast." "And if he's our thief?" I asked. Wolfe turned, expression unreadable. "Then he's not merely a thief of time, Archie. He's a thief of meaning, and that, in my estimation, is far worse." He closed his eyes, signaling dismissal, and I went to make the call to Worth's secretary. Outside, the city's clocks struck 7. Inside, Wolfe had already started to wind the case. Slowly, methodically, one click at a time. Galen Worth lived in one of those brownstones that had been airlifted intact from the Gilded Age and dropped, with reverence, into the modern world. The doorman had a voice like a hymn and an expression that suggested my shoes were too young for the carpet. I gave him my name, and a minute later I was ushered into a drawing room that could have hosted a duel without rearranging the furniture. Worth was there already. Silver hair, silver watch chain, and the kind of authority that had been brewed in old money and stale pride. He didn't rise when I entered, just nodded to indicate which chair had been pre-approved for my occupation. "Miss Vance sent you," he said, like it was an accusation. I sat. "Mr. Wolfe, technically. I'm the ambulatory half of the partnership. We're looking into the time that went missing from your foundation." "Time doesn't go missing," he said, smooth as a grandfather clock's chime. "It's spent, poorly in this case." He set his teacup down with precision that would have made Wolfe hum. "Tell me, Mr. Goodwin," he went on, "how much do you know about the Horologe Foundation?" "Just enough to wind it once a day," I said, "but I hear it's running fast towards scandal." He smiled, barely. "Miss Vance's initiative is misguided, this talk of education outreach, diverting funds from the preservation of true craftsmanship. It's a betrayal of our charter. And now, conveniently, her documents vanish." "Convenient for whom?" I asked. "For her, naturally. The missing files will delay the board vote, and she keeps her seat a few weeks longer. Or perhaps she arranged the theft herself to manufacture sympathy. It was an elegant theory, the kind that came pre-polished and easy to carry around. Too easy. "Where were you Monday night?" I asked. He raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting I crept into my own foundation to tinker with a safe I commissioned 20 years ago? I'm suggesting I'd like to know where you were." He sighed, checked his pocket watch and said, "At the Hamilton Club until 11. Ask anyone on the staff. After that, home. I sleep lightly but honestly." "Do you own a grey wool overcoat?" "Several. I assume this is the part where you announce one was found at the scene of the crime?" "Not quite. Just a thread. But threads have a way of weaving stories, Mr. Worth." He leaned back, the light catching his watch chain. "Then be careful you don't pull the wrong one. Miss Vance's ambitions threaten the Foundation's soul. Perhaps this theft is poetic justice." It was the kind of remark Wolfe would have filed, under-revealing if true, slander if false. I thanked him, promised nothing, and left him to his tea and moral superiority. Outside, the afternoon had turned to drizzle, the kind that doesn't fall, just hangs around waiting for you to give up. I hailed a cab back to the office, called Wolfe from the seat, and gave him the capsule version. He listened without interruption, which is how I knew he was interested. When I finished, he said, "Mr. Worth's disdain for Miss Vance is genuine, but genuine emotion and guilty conscience share mannerisms. Did he mention the watch chain unprompted?" "Yeah, why?" "Because no one mentions a timepiece without purpose, and because he expects admiration for precision. Men like Worth measure honesty in seconds." "That sounds like you're defending him." "On the contrary, I'm establishing motive. Pride wounded by change is more potent than greed." I got back to the brownstone to find Fritz making the kind of noises that indicate an intrusion on his culinary kingdom. The source was Tara Lyons, perched on the edge of the red settee, her gloves balled in her lap. She looked smaller than before, or maybe just cornered. "I needed to speak to Mr. Wolfe," she said when she saw me. "Privately, if possible." "He's in the plant rooms," I said, "and privacy is expensive real estate here. What's on your mind?" Her voice dropped. "It's about Mr. Baird. He's lying. He wasn't unconscious the whole time." I stopped halfway to the desk. "That's so?" She nodded, eyes darting to the door as if Baird might materialize in the archway. "When I found him, he stirred. He said something. The clock, 11:58, and then passed out again. I told the police he was unresponsive, but you edited the truth." She twisted her gloves. "I didn't want him accused. He's worked there 15 years. He's careless, not criminal." I didn't buy it completely, but I liked the rhythm. "Did you tell Miss Vance?" "No, she's already under suspicion. I didn't want to complicate things." "You just did," I said. "And you'll repeat every word of this to Wolfe." She started to protest, but Wolfe chose that moment to appear, large and immovable as a moral principle. He'd come down silently, which always unnerves the guilty and the innocent alike. "Miss Lyons," he said, "please sit." She sat. He folded himself into his chair with the solemnity of a ritual. "You believe Mr. Baird deceived the police. That is useful. Did you touch his watch?" "No." "Did you notice whether it was running?" She hesitated. "I think it was, just for a moment." "Ah," Wolfe said softly. "Then someone stopped it afterward. Someone who wanted to mark midnight, not as an event, but as an emblem. The act is theatrical, the intention psychological. Mr. Goodwin, tomorrow you will accompany Miss Vance to her board meeting. Listen carefully. This melodrama is being staged for an audience, and it's nearly curtain time." He leaned back, closed his eyes, and said, "Fritz, beer." Tara looked from him to me. "Do you think Mr. Baird's in danger?" Wolfe didn't open his eyes. "If he isn't now, he will be. Time has been tampered with, Miss Lyons, and men who do that rarely stop after 1 o'clock." She shivered, and for once, I didn't have a joke ready. Wolfe had shifted gears, and I could feel it, the calm before he starts rearranging people like chess pieces. He was winding them all tighter, waiting for the spring to snap. The next morning started with a phone call that ruined Fritz's plans for a calm breakfast and confirmed mine for a complicated day. It was Lydia Vance, her voice tight enough to slice toast. "Mr. Goodwin, something's happened. Edmund Baird didn't come into the office. The building superintendent found his car still in the garage, door half open, engine cold. He's gone." "Gone how? As in resigned from humanity or just skipped a shift?" "I don't know," she said. "His apartment's locked. The police are on their way." That last part guaranteed a visit from Inspector Kramer and probably another layer of red tape. I promised to be there and hung up. Wolfe, of course, had overheard, his hearing sharp enough to pick out a comma in a whisper. "Mr. Baird's disappearance," he said, "is predictable but inconvenient. It removes the least intelligent variable from the board's game and leaves us only the clever ones." "Or," I said, pouring myself coffee, "it means the least intelligent variable got himself eliminated." He frowned. "A hasty assumption. If he is dead, he is not the architect. If he is hiding, he may be frightened into confession. Either outcome can serve." "You're all heart," I told him and grabbed my hat. The foundation was buzzing when I arrived. Reporters outside, police inside, and enough nervous staff to run a panic drill. Lydia met me in the lobby, flanked by Maya Chen, who looked cool but wound tight, and Tara Lyons, who looked like she hadn't slept since the word safe lost its meaning. Kramer was there too, holding a cigarette he wasn't allowed to light. He grunted when he saw me. "Don't tell me Wolfe sent you to clean up." He prefers I make a mess first, I said. What's the story? Kramer jerked his head toward the stairwell. Baird's apartment's on the 4th floor, locked from the inside. We forced it. No body, no note, no Baird. Just this. He handed me a sealed evidence bag. Inside was a watch, brass casing, cracked glass, stopped at exactly 11:58. Déjà vu, I said. Cute, he growled. You think your genius boss will have an epiphany if I let him sniff it? Depends, I said. Does it smell like grey wool? He glared, then waved me off. Go poke around. If you trip, over Baird, call it in before you call Wolfe. The apartment looked staged, neat, impersonal, as if rented for a weekend. A few shirts hung in the closet. The bed was made, and on the desk sat an empty brandy glass and a folded piece of paper that read, Horologer owes time to no man. It wasn't in Baird's handwriting. I pocketed the note for Wolfe's dissection later. Tara appeared in the doorway. Inspector said I could look for his files. There were grant applications I need to... I held up the bag with the watch. Recognize this? She nodded faintly. That's his. He never went anywhere without it. Now it's gone without him. Her eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. You think he's dead? I think he's being played, I said. And if he is dead, someone's winding the narrative to make it tick neat. Back downstairs, Maya was arguing with Kramer over access to the boardroom. Lydia was on the phone, trying to calm someone, likely Worth. I motioned her aside. You still have that board meeting this afternoon? Yes, though I'd rather cancel. Don't, I said. Wolfe wants you there. He thinks the thief will too. She hesitated. He's using me as bait. I smiled. He prefers to say as proof of concept. By 2:00, the boardroom was a study in tension. Worth sat at the head, his silver watch chain gleaming like a medal. Maya, Tara, and Lydia formed a polite triangle of distrust. The agenda in front of each was identical except for one page. Someone had switched Lydia's. Hers bore a single phrase typed neatly across the center. Midnight strikes twice. She turned it toward me under the table. I took a picture with my phone and sent it to Wolfe with a short message, the clockmaker's handwriting again. He called within 5 minutes, his tone as smooth as chilled oil. Archie, tell Miss Vance to excuse herself on the pretext of nerves. Return with her to the brownstone immediately. I whispered the instruction. She obeyed without hesitation. Kramer's men could glare all they wanted. Wolfe had spoken. Back home, Wolfe was already in motion, or what passes for it in his species. He had the note from Baird's apartment laid out beside the new one, magnifier in hand, and a smudge of graphite dusting his fingers. They are typed on the same machine, he said. Old Remington, Model 7. The impression depth differs slightly, suggesting the typist altered the ribbon between messages. Someone who wished to disguise continuity but lacked subtlety. That narrows it down to half of Manhattan, I said. Not quite, he replied. Only the Foundation's archivist uses a Remington 7. Miss Lyons keeps it for cataloging, out of affection for obsolete precision. Affection can turn into obsession, I said. He looked up at me, eyes gleaming like the reflection off a knife. Indeed. Call Saul Panzer. Have him locate Miss Lyons, discreetly. I suspect she will not answer her phone. He was right. Saul called back an hour later. Found her car parked near the Queensboro Bridge, he said. Empty. Trunks clean. Glove compartment not so much. There's a half-written letter addressed to Wolfe. Read it, Wolfe said. Saul hesitated. It just says, You were right about time. It keeps everything. The line went silent for a moment. Wolfe didn't move, but the room seemed to thicken. Archie, he said at last, prepare the office for company. Miss Lyons will not be far behind, and she will bring, if I am correct, the missing records, or a confession written in her own punctual hand. He closed his eyes, leaned back and murmured, "Time, Archie, is a ruthless creditor, and I fear its collection is about to begin." The evening crawled by with the nervous quiet that only Wolfe's office could manage when suspense had pulled the air taut. Fritz moved silently in the kitchen, pretending not to listen, while Wolfe sat in his chair, eyes closed, fingers pressed together like the steeple of a church where logic worshipped itself. The only sound was the slow ticking of the wall clock, each second landing heavier than the last. I'd been pacing, which Wolfe tolerates the way he tolerates humidity. Barely. "Saul's sure about the car?" I asked. "He is incapable of uncertainty," Wolfe said without opening his eyes. "Miss Lyons is not running, she is reflecting, and when reflection becomes unbearable, she will come here." "She could also be reflecting from a riverbed," I said. "That would be vulgar," Wolfe replied. "Miss Lyons is meticulous. She would prefer symmetry. If her first act was theft, her last will be restitution." It was around 8 when the bell rang, short, quick, nervous. Fritz appeared a moment later, face drawn. "It is Miss Lyons," he said quietly. "She looks unwell." I went to the door and found Tara standing there, pale under the lamplight, hair damp from rain. She was clutching a manila envelope against her chest like a life preserver. When she saw me, relief flickered through her eyes, then vanished behind exhaustion. "Mr. Wolfe," she said as I led her in. I didn't know where else to go." "You knew exactly where," Wolfe said without sympathy. "Sit down, Miss Lyons. You have been waiting for this conversation all day." She sank into the red chair, the envelope trembling in her hands. "You were right," she said softly. "About the typewriter. About me." I leaned against the desk. "You want to start by explaining why Baird's gone missing and your car's parked near the Queensboro Bridge?" Her fingers tightened around the envelope. "He called me last night. Said he'd found something, the missing report, but not where it should have been." He sounded frightened. "When I got to his apartment, he was already gone." "Thought maybe he'd gone to you." Wolfe's brows twitched. "He did not." She nodded faintly. "Then I searched his desk. There was a note. One line from a draft I'd typed months ago. That's when I realized what he discovered." "Enlighten us," Wolfe said. "The theft wasn't about money or sabotage," she said. "It was about authorship. The grant proposal that went missing, Lydia's proposal. It wasn't hers. It was mine." I stopped pacing. "You wrote the thing she's been pitching to the board?" "Yes. Every word. I've worked on education outreach for years. Lydia liked the idea but said the board wouldn't take it seriously unless it came from her. She promised credit later. When the draft was finished, she filed it under her name." Tara's voice trembled now, but her gaze stayed fixed on Wolfe. "When the board praised it, she called it a collaborative effort." I realized she'd stolen not time, but my time, my work. So I took hers. "Theft by symmetry," Wolfe murmured. "You removed the documents to expose her hypocrisy." She nodded. "I didn't mean for it to become a scandal. I wanted her to confess privately. But Baird discovered the missing logs and he confronted her, I think. That's why he was attacked. Someone wanted to silence him." "Attacked," I repeated. "You're saying his fainting act wasn't voluntary?" She opened the envelope and slid out several pages. Photocopies of the missing report, and a smaller item, the original time log from the night of the burglary. "Here. The log shows someone entered the archive at 11:58 using the security override. That code was only known to Lydia and Baird." I looked at Wolfe. "And we found the note in Baird's apartment. The watch stopped at the same time. Midnight strikes twice." "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Miss Lyons. What else?" She hesitated, then drew out one last page. A typed confession. "I left this in my car in case I didn't come back. I forged the first anonymous note to taunt her. I wanted her to feel the fear of being exposed, but then Baird disappeared, and I realized someone else was using my deception as cover. Wolfe studied her silently for a long moment. Then he said, "You have made yourself both victim and accomplice, but not murderer." "I didn't kill him," she whispered. "I swear I didn't." The bell rang again, this time loud, firm, final. I moved to the door, half expecting Kramer. Instead, Lydia Vance swept in, rain glinting on her coat, fury wrapped in composure. "Mr. Wolfe," she said, "I've been told the police found Miss Lyons' car abandoned. I assumed you'd have her." Her eyes locked on Tara. And I was right. Tara rose, trembling. "Lydia, please, don't," Vance snapped. "You've humiliated me enough. Whatever you've told him, I'll deny it." "You cannot deny evidence," Wolfe said. "You may, however, postpone disgrace." She turned toward him sharply. "You think I had something to do with Edmund's disappearance?" "I think," Wolfe said evenly, "that you have confused possession with creation, Miss Vance. You stole Miss Lyons' work. When it was stolen back, you panicked. Mr. Baird discovered too much and became inconvenient." "That's absurd," she said. "I didn't harm Edmund. He was loyal." "Loyal men are most dangerous when they stop being so," Wolfe said. "Which is why I suspect before this evening ends, we shall hear from him again, either by his reappearance or by discovery of his body." Lydia's composure cracked just for a second. "You're guessing," she said. "I do not guess," Wolfe replied. "I arrange." The phone rang then, slicing the air. I picked it up, listened, and felt the temperature of the room drop. "It's Saul," I said quietly. "They found Baird. Alive." Wolfe's eyes opened fully for the first time that night. "Where?" "In a storage room at the Foundation," I said. "Locked inside. He's hurt but talking." Wolfe exhaled once, softly. "Then the clockmaker has aired. Miss Vance, Miss Lyons, remain precisely where you are. Time, as ever, will tell." And for the first time that night, even the ticking clock seemed to hesitate. By the time I reached the Foundation, the place was wrapped in police tape and late-night tension. The building's lobby lights had that pale yellow glare that makes everyone look guilty. Kramer was already there, coat open, cigarette in hand, and the look on his face said he'd been cheated out of his evening whiskey. "Goodwin," he said, not even pretending to be happy about it. "Your boss knew before I did. You tell me how." "Telepathy," I said. "He charges extra for it." Kramer grunted. "You want to see Baird? He's upstairs, but don't get cute. He's been through hell." I followed him up to a narrow service corridor where the door to a storage room hung open. Inside, under the flickering fluorescence, Edmund Baird sat on an overturned crate, wrapped in a blanket. He looked like he'd been scraped off the floor of a ship, face bruised, shirt torn, hands trembling. A medic was finishing a bandage on his temple. When he saw me, he managed a weak grin. "Archie Goodwin, you're either here to arrest me or rescue me. I'll take either." "Let's call it a friendly interrogation," I said. "Who locked you in?" He rubbed his head. "Didn't see. I was hit from behind. Smelled ether. When I came to, the safe logs were gone. Someone wanted me out of the way, but not dead." "Then they've got a conscience," I said. "Small, but alive." He shook his head. "No. They needed me alive until the board meeting passed. After that," I said, "you'd have become inconvenient again." He looked up sharply. "Wolfe figured that out, didn't he?" "Wolfe figures out everything except how to stand up for more than 10 minutes. Baird gave a hollow laugh that turned into a cough. "Tell him I didn't mean for this. I wanted to protect Lydia. She's reckless, but she isn't cruel. I thought if I stalled the investigation, hid the files, it would buy her time to smooth things over. But someone else, someone smarter, used me." "Used you how?" "There's another set of access codes," he said. I created them a few months ago for maintenance testing. Lydia doesn't know. Only Maya does. She helped me set the override during the archive renovations. That name hit like a clean strike on a bell. Maya Chen, the creative one. She wanted the Foundation modernized, same as Lydia. But when Lydia took Tara's work, Maya saw a way to pit them against each other. The theft, the notes, it's her idea of poetic justice. She always said time is a narrative. I didn't think she meant it literally. I left Baird with the medics and called Wolfe from the hall. His voice came through thick with satisfaction. So, the clockmaker is Miss Chen. Baird's sure of it, I said. She had the access, the motive, and apparently a taste for dramatic irony. Indeed. Have Kramer escort Mr. Baird to safety and bring Miss Chen here at once. Do not alert her to the accusation. Tell her Mr. Wolfe wishes to clarify the timeline. She will come. Vanity is punctual. I hung up and found Kramer in the lobby, barking at a uniform about evidence tags. We need Miss Chen, I said. Wolfe wants her in his office, quietly. Kramer scowled. He thinks he's running this show. He is, I said. You're just doing the heavy lifting. By the time we reached the brownstone, it was past 10. Wolfe had rearranged the office like a stage. Chairs set in a semicircle, beer untouched, the typewritten notes spread across his desk like a script. Lydia and Tara sat apart, each in a separate storm cloud. When Maya arrived, she was calm, precise, and curious. She looked like someone walking into her own trial and planning to win it. Mr. Wolfe, she said, glancing at the others. I wasn't aware this was a committee. Merely a convocation, Wolfe said. Sit. I am weary of shadows. She sat, crossing her legs, unhurried. You found something? Yes, Wolfe said. You, or rather, your handiwork. The staged theft, the notes, the dramatic fixation on midnight, all yours. Maya's eyes didn't flicker. You'll think I did all this to what? Embarrass the Foundation? No, Wolfe said softly. To rewrite it. Miss Vance stole Miss Lines's idea. You stole Miss Vance's authority. You imagined yourself restoring balance, when in truth you sought authorship. The entire drama is a mirror for your vanity. That's nonsense, she said, but her voice had lost its polish. I wanted fairness. Fairness achieved through deceit, Wolfe said. You created the illusion of mystery to expose hypocrisy, never realizing that you were committing a greater theft. The theft of trust. You orchestrated Baird's disappearance, hoping to control the narrative. You failed. Her hand trembled slightly. You have no proof. Wolfe pointed to the typed notes. The Remington 7, the altered ribbon, the peculiar spacing of the letter I. Only your typing exhibits that flaw. I've compared your archival reports. Her face paled. You can't. I can, and I have. Wolfe leaned forward, voice quiet but final. You arranged Baird's confinement to make it appear he'd fled with the documents. When he woke too soon, you abandoned him. The typewritten message in his apartment and the one delivered to Miss Vance were your insurance. Artistry, as you would call it. The room was silent except for the ticking clock. Then Maya stood abruptly. If you think this is justice, you're wrong. I only wanted the truth told. Lydia exploited all of us. The board worships image, not integrity. Perhaps, Wolfe said. But integrity is not served by imitation. You manipulated time, Miss Chen, and time, true time, always strikes back. Kramer stepped out from behind the door where he'd been waiting, arms folded. You heard the man, Miss Chen. Her expression hardened into something almost proud. You won't find the files. I destroyed the originals. Incorrect, Wolfe said. Miss Lines has provided copies. Your destruction was, like your scheme, merely symbolic. She gave a bitter laugh, and as Kramer led her out, she said over her shoulder, You solve puzzles, Mr. Wolfe, but you don't fix people. When the door closed, the office felt lighter, though Wolfe didn't move. Lydia sat stiffly, hands clasped, while Tara stared at the floor. Wolfe opened his eyes. "Miss Vance," he said, "Miss Lyons deserves acknowledgement, publicly." Lydia nodded slowly, the fight gone out of her. "She'll have it." "See that she does," Wolfe said and leaned back. "I have no appetite for second acts." I poured him his beer, and he raised it with the gravity of a toast. "Archie," he said, "time has been restored to its rightful pace." "Sure," I said. "But if it ever gets stolen again, I'm billing by the hour." Wolfe let the silence settle like dust. He'd given Kramer his culprit, Lydia her atonement, and Tara her vindication. Ordinarily, that would have been the end of it. The moral arithmetic balanced, the universe politely excused. But that night, the balance didn't feel right. The ticking of the office clock wasn't steady. It lagged, faintly offbeat, as if time itself had been shaken and hadn't quite recovered. Tara sat rigidly, eyes on her lap, while Lydia kept staring at the closed door through which Maya Chen had been led. Fritz brought coffee, and Wolfe dismissed him with a gesture. The faint aroma of roast and orchid fertilizer hung in the air. Wolfe hadn't spoken since Kramer left. He didn't need to. The case was solved, or so everyone thought. I was the one who finally broke it. "You're quiet," I said. "Too quiet for a man who just unmasked a creative sociopath before dessert." "Quietude, Archie," Wolfe murmured, "is not absence. It is digestion." "Of facts or duck confit?" "Both," he said, and opened his eyes. "Miss Vance, I suggest you remain seated. There is an epilogue to this melodrama." She blinked. I thought it was over. "So did Miss Chen," Wolfe said. "That is precisely the problem." Tara looked up sharply. "You don't think—" "She wasn't lying about destroying the originals." "No," Wolfe said. "She was lying about her purpose in doing so." He shifted his bulk just slightly, enough to make the chair sigh. "Miss Chen's motive was not simply exposure or justice. It was preservation. She destroyed the originals not to erase the record, but to ensure she alone controlled the story that would replace them. Had she succeeded, the Foundation's entire future, its reputation, its funding, its narrative, would have been rewritten under her authorship. Miss Lyons's guilt, Miss Vance's ambition, Mr. Baird's confusion, these were instruments in her symphony." Lydia's jaw tightened. "She's in custody now. She can't harm anyone." "Not directly," Wolfe said, "but the instruments she tuned may still play her melody. There are copies of her forgeries somewhere. False drafts, falsified logs. She needed them to support her illusion. She did not destroy everything." He turned to me. "Archie, the safe at the Foundation. Did you notice any trace of adhesive on the inner wall?" I thought back to the inspection. "There was residue near the hinge. Looked like tape or wax." Wolfe nodded. "Precisely. Miss Chen had hidden duplicates behind the rear panel, knowing that when the theft was discovered, the police would focus on the empty compartment and overlook the false back. She meant to retrieve them later, after the scandal matured." "Except Baird got in the way," I said. "Exactly. Her improvisation began when he woke." Wolfe leaned back again, eyes glinting. "Which means the documents are still there, or were, until our meddling forced her to adjust. Kramer's men are competent but unimaginative. They will not find the panel." Lydia's composure cracked. "If those papers come out, if they contradict the originals, our reputation will be destroyed again." "Not destroyed," Wolfe said calmly. "Corrected, this time truthfully. You will call the board tomorrow and tell them the records have been restored. Then you will permit Miss Lyons to present her authorship openly. The Foundation must face its own corruption in daylight, or it will spend eternity hiding from clocks." Tara's breath caught. "You mean I still have a place there?" Wolfe's gaze softened, just barely. if Miss Vance has sense. And you, Miss Lyons, must learn that revenge, however justified, is the crudest form of punctuation. She managed a weak smile. I think I've learned enough about punctuation for one lifetime. Good, he said. Then the sentence may end. That should have been it. The graceful closing of another Wolfe masterpiece. But when the bell rang again, short and hard, the tension snapped back like a rewound spring. Fritz opened the door, and Kramer walked in uninvited, coat damp from rain, expression blacker than his hat. "You'll love this," he said. "We were cataloguing the evidence from Maya Chen's apartment. Found a second typewriter, portable, not a Remington. She'd been typing new statements, half a dozen drafts, all naming Lydia Vance as the instigator and Baird as her accomplice." Lydia's color drained. "That's insane. She's trying to frame me." "Relax," I said. "Nobody sane believes a confession typed after an arrest." Kramer looked at Wolfe. "Still think your poetess was finished." Wolfe sighed. "She's consistent. Every artist desires a final flourish. Miss Chen means to finish her story from behind bars. She will write it until someone stops reading." Kramer frowned. "So what do you suggest?" "Nothing," Wolfe said. "Let her type. Truth will bury fiction soon enough." Kramer snorted and left. The door closed with a thud that echoed longer than it should have. Wolfe watched it, unmoving, the lamplight carving deep shadows across his face. Lydia rose uncertainly. "Then that's all?" "For tonight," Wolfe said. "Go home. Sleep. Tomorrow you will face your board and accept that your integrity must now be proven, not presumed." She left with Tara, their silence a truce waiting to happen. I watched the cab pull away from the window, then turned back to Wolfe. "You knew Chen wasn't done, didn't you?" "I suspected," he said. "Artists never finish. They abandon." I sank into my chair. "So what's your grand conclusion this time, boss? That time keeps everyone honest?" He looked at the clock, then at me. "No, Archie. Time keeps no one honest. It merely reveals who was lying." That was Wolfe's version of poetry, and I wasn't about to ruin it. Fritz came in to announce dinner. Soup, roast pheasant, and Fritz's idea of forgiveness baked into every bite. Wolfe rose with a creak of finality and moved toward the dining room. "Coming?" I asked. "In a moment," he said. "I wish to reset the clock. It is lagging." And as he adjusted the brass hands with surgical precision, I realized it wasn't the clock that had lost time. It was the world, spinning too fast for the man who refused to move with it. Wolfe's justice was old-fashioned, deliberate, inconvenient, and yet somehow exactly on time. The next morning began with the kind of silence that makes you suspect the city's holding its breath. Fritz had brewed coffee strong enough to melt wallpaper, and Wolfe was exactly where you'd expect him, planted behind his desk, surrounded by orchids, and reading the Gazette as though the world depended on his digestion of it. The story had already broken. Foundation scandal deepens. Arrest made in time theft affair. Wolfe's name appeared nowhere, which meant he was satisfied. Kramer's name appeared everywhere, which meant Kramer wasn't. I poured myself a cup and leaned against the windowsill. So the world knows. Chen in custody, Vance redeemed, and the Foundation cleansed by daylight. Case closed, right? Closed? Wolfe lowered the paper, his expression sharpening. Nothing closes until it stops breathing. "That's a comforting image," I said. "You planning to exhume something?" He tapped a paragraph with his finger. "Miss Chen has declined counsel. She requested a typewriter in her cell, and Inspector Kramer, out of sentimental idiocy, provided one." I grinned. "She's still writing her masterpiece." "Indeed," Wolfe said, "and when she finishes, someone will publish it. Lies are more durable than ledgers." He folded the paper. "I dislike untidy conclusions, Archie. There is still a clock running somewhere in this affair. Then maybe it's time we let it wind down naturally. He gave me a look that could have chilled a thermos. Natural decay is acceptable in wine, not in justice. That was my cue to put on my coat. You want me to pay Chen a visit? Precisely. She will not speak to Kramer, but she may relish an audience who listens. You have the advantage of curiosity without authority. Use it. At the detention center, Maya Chen looked less like a prisoner and more like a scholar caught in an inconvenient storm. The cell was bare, but she'd managed to make it a studio. Scraps of paper on the cot, a cup of instant coffee on the floor, and the borrowed typewriter on the narrow table. "Archie Goodwin," she said when she saw me. "Mr. Wolfe's emissary of charm. I was expecting you." "Your expectations are punctual," I said. "He wants to know why you're still typing when the story's over." She smiled faintly. "Is it? The story doesn't end when truth is told. It ends when people stop reading. Wolfe should know that better than anyone." "I'll tell him you called him a novelist," I said. "He'll be flattered." Her eyes glinted. "He'd deny it, but he crafts narratives as carefully as I do. Only his tools are deduction and contempt instead of words." I leaned against the wall. "You're not going to charm your way out of this. You forged evidence, locked a man in a storage room, and nearly turned an institution into a crime scene." "I revealed what it already was," she said. "A machine that measures hours and hoards them. You think I care about the foundation? I cared about the story, the shape of it. A woman steals another's work, a loyal subordinate hides the sin, and I, the observer, turn their deceit into truth. That's literature, Mr. Goodwin." "Sure," I said. "Except in literature, the hero usually survives the second act." She laughed softly, then turned back to the typewriter. "Wolfe wants to know my ending. Tell him it's already written." She slid a sheet toward me. Typed across it, crisp and centered, were the words, "Time keeps everything." I frowned. He's already seen that line. "Then he knows it's true," she said. "Tell him the clock he's looking for is still ticking. It's inside the brownstone." I left her there, humming quietly as she typed another page. The words followed me all the way back through the rain, sticking like burrs. When I got home, Wolfe was mid-lunch and mid-frown. He didn't bother asking for my report. He knew from my face that I had one. "She's still on her poetic spree," I said. Gave me a souvenir. Same phrase, same paper. "Show me." I handed him the page. He examined it, nostrils flaring slightly. "Same ribbon, same typewriter. But the paper..." He rubbed it between his fingers. "Heavier stock. Quality unavailable in a prison supply room." I blinked. "Meaning what?" "Meaning she's had assistance," Wolfe said. "Someone is bringing her supplies. Someone sympathetic or complicit." I didn't like the direction that was going. "You think Vance?" He shook his head. "No, Miss Vance is exhausted. Not foolish. But Mr. Baird, he remains loyal, and guilt makes men gullible." That sent a chill through me. So Chen's still pulling strings through him, from a cell. Precisely. She has already rewritten the Foundation's history once. Now she means to rewrite her own, and Mr. Baird will be her publisher. I set my coffee down. "You want me to stop him?" "I want you to watch him," Wolfe said. "If he attempts to circulate her writings, retrieve them. Quietly." It didn't take long. That evening, Baird appeared at the brownstone, carrying an envelope thick enough to hold trouble. I met him at the door before Fritz could, and his expression told me everything. Fear dressed up as purpose. "Miss Chen asked me to deliver this to you," he said. "She said it would close the case." "Did she now?" I said, taking the envelope. "Let's see what kind of closure she sells." Inside were 3 neatly typed pages. Confessions, apologies, timelines, all polished like a performance. But the last line was what mattered. "Nero Wolfe knows the truth but will not speak it. He keeps time as his accomplice. I whistled softly. That woman's got a flair for the dramatic. Wolfe read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. She believes that if she cannot own her story, she will infect mine. It is her final act of control. So what now? Now, he said, we refuse the gift. He set the envelope in the ashtray, struck a match, and watched the paper curl and blacken. Truth is not art, Archie. It is sustenance, and I do not dine on poison. When the last scrap turned to ash, he leaned back, eyes closing. Miss Chen has written her ending. Let her keep it. Time, for once, will not be her ally. Outside, the city's clocks began to strike midnight. Inside, Wolfe opened his eyes just long enough to say, Archie, remind me tomorrow to order a new watch. This one loses 2 seconds a day. Unacceptable. I smiled. Sure, boss. But for once, I think you're ahead of time. The next morning arrived grey and deliberate, the way endings usually do when they're pretending not to be endings. Fritz had already set the table with eggs, ham, and resignation. Wolfe was still upstairs with his orchids, the greenhouse windows fogged like the inside of an old mind that refuses to forget. I let him have his ritual. After the week we'd had, even the orchids deserved a sermon. When he finally descended, the house felt heavier, as though the air had learned from him how to conserve energy. He took his seat, opened the morning paper, and didn't say a word until Fritz poured the beer. That was my cue to sit down. They printed her obituary, he said finally, not looking up. Whose? Maya Chen's. She hanged herself in her cell late last night. For once, I didn't have a wisecrack. The silence between us stretched. Wolfe kept reading as if punctuation could fend off mortality. When he spoke again, his voice was low, deliberate. It appears that time has, at last, collected its debt, I said. Kramer must be gnashing his badge. Kramer, Wolfe muttered, is capable of anger but not reflection. He will file the necessary report, curse the institution, and dine badly. That will be his morning. He folded the paper and laid it aside. For Miss Chen, I am less certain. She achieved what she desired most, authorship. Death has made her narrative immutable. People will read her confession as tragedy, not as artifice. She wins, in a way. Except she lost everything first, I said. Wolfe gave me a look that could have straightened a crooked ruler. You mistake consequence for regret. She never regretted. She merely concluded. Fritz cleared the plates with the care of a man handling fragile egos, and when he left, Wolfe gestured toward the phone. Call Miss Vance. Tell her she is free of the matter. The Foundation will resume its routine, Mr. Baird will confirm the restored documents, and Miss Lyons will take her rightful credit. The institution will heal. On the surface. Just the surface? I asked. Always the surface, he said. Institutions do not heal beneath. They fossilize. I made the call. Lydia Vance's voice came through crisp and subdued. She'd already heard the news. Her tone was the kind you reserve for funerals where you're not sure whether you're grieving or relieved. I owe you both more than I can say, she told me. The board met this morning. They've reinstated my position but insisted that Tara's name appear on every future publication. She's in shock, poor girl, but she'll recover. We all will. Try to stay out of mysteries for a while, I said. That depends, she said after a pause. Do they ever stay out of me? I didn't answer. Wolfe was watching me with that heavy-lidded curiosity that usually precedes a lecture. When I hung up, he said, she will attempt virtue now. It will not suit her, but she will wear it anyway. You could try optimism once in a while, I said. He lifted his glass. Optimism is merely hope that forgot to think. By late afternoon, the brownstone had returned to its usual rhythm, quiet, civilized, and faintly suspicious of the world beyond the stoop. Fritz retreated to the kitchen to prepare dinner. Wolfe buried himself in a volume of Montaigne, muttering occasionally about human folly, as though Montaigne had left footnotes just for him. I tried reading, but the image of Maya Chen at that typewriter wouldn't leave. The way she'd typed her endings, one after another, until she became one. The rhythm of the keys had sounded too much like a clock. "Something bothering you?" Wolfe asked without looking up. "I was thinking about her," I said. "Chen. What she said about stories, how they don't end when the truth's told, only when people stop reading." Wolfe shut his book and regarded me with mild disgust. "Philosophy is best left to philosophers. Miss Chen mistook drama for depth. Her tragedy was not that she wrote her own ending, but that she needed an audience to applaud it." "Still," I said, "she was right about one thing. Time keeps everything." He smiled faintly. "Time keeps records, not meaning. Meaning must be earned, and she squandered hers." We let that sit. Outside, the light dimmed into the kind of evening that smells faintly of rain and closure. Wolfe rose with the deliberation of a judge adjourning court. "Dinner, Archie," he said. "Fritz will despair if it cools." As we moved to the dining room, I asked, "So what's the moral this time, boss? Don't write checks you can't cash? Don't plagiarize your archivist?" He paused halfway to his chair. "If you must insist on moralizing, Archie, let it be this. Those who manipulate time, whether on a clock, on paper, or in memory, will always find themselves out of step with it." "Catchy," I said. "Maybe I'll embroider it for the wall." He sat, unfolded his napkin, and regarded me with weary patience. "Do not, under any circumstances, embroider philosophy." Dinner passed in companionable silence, broken only by Fritz's quiet triumphs and the occasional grunt of approval from Wolfe. When the plates were cleared and the brandy poured, Wolfe leaned back, eyes half closed. "The case was distasteful," he said, "not because of its mechanics. They were pedestrian, but because of its essence. Theft of time, theft of credit, theft of truth. Such crimes leave no residue one can wash away." "Yet you solved it," I said. "That counts for something." "It counts for equilibrium," he said. "Justice is rarely attainable. Balance occasionally." He took a slow sip of brandy and gestured at the clock on the mantel. "You will notice it no longer lags." I looked. The hands had been reset precisely, ticking in perfect time. "You fixed it," I said. "I restored it," he corrected. "Fixing implies improvement. Restoration merely returns things to what they were meant to be." He fell silent again, and I knew that was my signal to end the day. I gathered my notes, turned out the lights, and left him there in the golden glow of the lamp. Massive, immovable, and surrounded by the quiet precision of his kingdom. As I headed upstairs, I heard the faint click of the clock's second hand marking its steady rhythm. Wolfe had been right about one thing. Time keeps records. It keeps everything, in fact. Truth, lies, triumphs, failures. It never forgets, but I figured, if it ever needed reminding, Nero Wolfe would be right there, in his chair, keeping it honest.